Professor Dr. A.R.D. Prasad, the Head of the Documentation Research and Training Center, ISI Bangalore, Dr. Devika Madali, the Associate Professor of DRTC, ISI Bangalore, and the distinguished dignitaries and guests. The topic of the keynote address is Big Data, Issues in Organizing and Retrieval. We have an eminent personality, Professor Dr. A.R.D. Prasad, to deliver the keynote address, and a great scholar, Dr. Devika Madali, to moderate this session.
Good morning, friends. It's a pleasure to be here, especially moderating a very important topic under the main theme of the conference. Father John approached us nearly about more than a year ago, and meticulously planned this, and he was particular about this theme because it's not often we find this particular theme being discussed in many of our seminars and conferences. And at that time, Professor Prasad was also, from that time on till now, we are involved in organizing big data, dealing with how to deal with big data, because data has grown, and today it's called big data. Whether it's just another fad or it's here to stay, we cannot say, but then there are some real-time issues related to big data that we are facing practically when we are trying to deal with this. The issues are at practical level, like storage, addressing the data, retrieval. They are also at various policy levels and other levels. So we thought that a contemplation on this particular area would be very good for an audience like this. And I'm sure that's what Professor Prasad will throw light on in his talk. And to introduce him will be like holding a small lamp to the sun or something like this. Many of you present here know Professor Prasad already. He's a head, he heads the Documentation Research and Training Center. I myself and thousands of us like me were his students, and I'm a colleague there. He has served on many scientific and evaluatory committees worldwide, including the DSpace Governance Advisory Board at MIT, Massachusetts, USA. He's on the EU Projects Evaluation Committee at Brussels. He is the scientific lead of European Commission funded projects like the Living Knowledge Project and the AG Infra project of the European Commission. And at present, he is also the India head for the computer sciences in the India Trento Advanced Research Program he is heading. He was a member of the National Knowledge Commission, which was headed by Sam Pitroda those days, and he is now the member of the high-level committee on the National Mission for Libraries. So his achievements go on, and I could take a better part of this session just introducing him. Without that, I hand over the session to Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Dr. Devika. First, let me thank Father John and Dharmaram institutions for giving me the opportunity to be here and presenting my presentation on data repositories. First, actually there was a little communication gap. Okay, the topic announced was big data, but again I will be talking a little about data repositories and linked data, because big data has two aspects. One is data analytics, okay, like web analytics, where statistical approaches are taken and trying to apply data mining techniques and other things. And being in Indian Statistical Institute, luckily I do not know anything about statistics. Okay. And I as a library science person, I deal with how to make the data accessible and even more than that, discoverable. Okay, that is, we have to talk about the metadata and ontologies of big data. Okay, that is what we have been doing for the last few years. In fact, there is a related topic called semantic web. So, in fact, Tim Berners-Lee calls it data web. Okay. in that case, definitely the librarians have a big role to play. In fact, in 2007, when we announced a conference on semantic web and digital libraries, a set of computer science people from Europe wrote a really scathing letter. Okay, I wanted to call it nasty letter, okay, but it's a scathing letter, saying that in which way librarians are related to semantic web technology, and so because that group especially works in semantic web technology. And I and Dr. Devika sat patiently and explained to them why we are more interested. Perhaps we went a little overboard to realize semantic web without librarians. That is not possible. Okay, that is the way we tried to put it, and we wrote a 3-page letter answer to them, and it convinced them so much. Next, under Erasmus Mundus Fellowship, Dr. Devika was invited to teach library classification in a computer science department, and which led later them to convince that in semantic web we require much of the Ranganathan's principles of facetization. Okay, that is where we proposed a project called Living Knowledge with many others like Yahoo, University of Southampton, then European Archives from France. All these people, we together proposed a EU project, and we worked on it. Hopefully, Yahoo would augment their search engine with our search results, where I think it is going to use the faceted classification techniques in opinion mining and time evolution and opinion mining. And for example, whether Turkey should join European Union. So what are the statements of the different heads of the state, whether they changed over the time, and all that was covered. Or about Chinese holding Olympics. I mean, I am telling the examples from the past because that project was over about a couple of years back. In any case, what I would like to emphasize here is we have a big role to play in semantic web, which is supposedly the virtual web. One of my duties here when I am invited as a keynote speaker, how to link the theme to my topic, okay? So semantic web is a virtual web, okay? I know that when I was a student sometime in '81, there was a big discussion about the then recently published Lancaster's book on paperless society. So whether paper will disappear. I know that a lot of emotions really poured out. Some people say without paper there won't be even future for us. And I know that, of course, our love for paper and our love for libraries would make us believe that paper is going to be there forever. There cannot be a paperless society. For me, I would look more from a philosophical point of view, that is, nothing is permanent in this world. Of course, that is one of the basic Buddhist principles. I saw even Christ in Buddha's posture here. Okay, that is Abhay Mudra's posture. Nothing is permanent, and when paper was evolved, I think maybe 500-600 years back, I think human civilization was much more than that, even before the appearance of paper. And probably from the present situation, we believe that paper is indispensable, okay? Even mankind is not indispensable, okay? That's my answer. So, who knows down 50 years or 100 years whether there will be paper at all, okay? Because nothing is permanent. Even computers may not be there. Maybe they may operate in a different form, okay? They may be there in a different form. So change is one of the unchangeable principles of this universe. So that way, the libraries in future, if in fact as such, you can say that many librarians complain nowadays with the electronic access to journals and books and the internet, nobody is coming to the library. So naturally, the space, whether virtual libraries will emerge, because we are in a very transitory phase, whether I think it will happen, okay? Even libraries are not permanent, we have to accept that. So my answer is, libraries at a conceptual level, they are there. That means the objective of the library is to provide information. The librarians is to provide information. I think this persists as long as mankind persists, okay? As long as mankind is alive, there will be requirement of information, and with plethora of information, there will be a band of specialists who filter the information and give it to the users. So that way, I think the present form may not be there. Like in the philosophical debate, no, the form and essence. So essence would be there, form may change, okay? The essence of librarianship, whether it is called librarianship or library science, or latter change it to information science. Now I think UC Berkeley and others are calling even data science, okay? That is, everybody is talking about data science. So I thought in the context of space, I can somehow link it to my topic, that is on data repositories. Okay. Okay. Then looking back, in fact, I and Dr. Devika, of course, she is one of my favorite students, and maybe in sometimes even students teach lessons to the gurus, no? Okay. So whatever it is, we always talk about some from various dioceses that open mantra, which we call it. That is open access to information, open source software, open standards, and open content. Okay, open content is very important. The reason is, in fact, I can boldly say last 15 years, I never used any commercial software. So that's why I don't use Windows operating system even, okay. I use only the open source software, even if it is offered free. Once I think Oracle country manager asked me whether he wanted to give Oracle multi-user license. When I said Linux, okay, Linux based and all that, I said I don't want, because I don't want to use, I don't want to teach also any commercial stuff. That's why I teach PHP, but definitely not ASP. Okay, anyhow, leaving that. So open access movement really brought big changes, okay, conceptually. See, the data repositories and other things are digital libraries. I look at them as part of the open access movement. In a way, this so-called open access movement in the beginning definitely bridged the so-called gap between the haves and have-nots in social sciences, to a large extent in physical and natural sciences. Now, if you look at the publications, many publications use data, isn't it? After all, when we publish a thesis or when we publish an article, it is based on data, whether you have laboratory data or survey data or whatever data, you may have data. That's why usually the thesis in pure physics may be smaller, but applied physics thesis would be much bigger, okay? So, because a lot of data has to be incorporated into that. And, but actual article may not have data. The reason is the space constraint. That's why the publishing industry never was interested in data, okay? That's why when we talk about open data, that means to open up the data and publicly accessible, there is least resistance from the publishing industry. Whereas if you talk about journal articles, publishing industry plays all kinds of tricks, okay? First they heckle open access journals, they are third-rate journals, okay? Like that, or they try to bribe the governments lot of this one saying that not to remove the copyright laws. Okay, that's why I like with regard to copyright laws in publication, I like one of Bismarck's statements. You know, I think sausages, how they are made. Okay, basically the less attractive parts of the beef or this one, they mince meat it and make sausages. So Bismarck says people should not know how sausages and laws are made, because laws are made taking mostly, some laws are completely biased to the industry, okay, because I know copyright laws completely biased. They are neither favorable to the author nor to the end user, and it favors only the publishers who do not support any research except printing and selling, okay. They may say that, no, we put a lot of effort. That is true, but again, review process is done by experts for which they don't get any money, author doesn't get any money, okay. I mean, the entire law is, on the face of it is, that's why I think Mark Twain says, only God can understand copyright laws, okay. So anyhow, but when Government of India also has taken a step towards open repositories, data repositories, in the sense there was a circular saying that the institutions funded by the government should open up the data. So now various governments, if you look at the web, datagov.uk, datagov.in, datagov.new Zealand, NZ, like that, every government is trying to publish the data openly so that people can access them, okay. So now coming back to what are the advantages of publishing the data, okay. First is lack of space, but now internet solves that problem. Any amount of data you can host it on internet, okay. Probably printing and distribution would be much costlier than publishing it on web. Author might have overlooked some data, okay. So better to, you remember about a year or a year and a half back, one of the Italian scientists from INFN, that is their nuclear lab, claimed that he found a subatomic particle which is faster than light. Of course, it evoked a lot of sensation around the world, and unfortunately or fortunately, INFN was one of our partners in another EU project on agricultural information. Of course, we were dealing with the computer science people of that lab. Then everybody looked at the data and found there are a lot of flaws in his interpretation. Then I asked my friend from INFN, what happened to that scientist? Oh, he was simply asked to resign, okay. That is one of the so-called self-corrective measures of science, okay. Science, we believe it is self-corrective. Today it may claim something, but tomorrow if it is wrong, science would accept that, okay. Now, authors deliberately did not present the data so that others cannot verify the data, okay. Sometimes we feel, see, after all, authors are also humans, so they also suffer from the human weaknesses, okay. It's not that authors are saints, okay, or gods or angels. In fact, some people suspect the Freudian case studies were fictitious. Not only normally in psychology experiments, they give the fictitious names of the subjects, of the patients. But some people suspect whether Freud created completely fictitious stories around it to drive his point, okay. In fact, I read his interpretation of dreams, which I consider somewhat hilarious rather, okay. Anyhow, leaving that. If the data is available, others may draw different conclusions contradictory to that of the author, okay. So it's not that the data, after all, even in statistics we say descriptive statistics means you have the raw data, you want to describe it following certain tests and principles or other things. But again, it doesn't mean that everybody applies statistics correctly. In fact, jocularly I say, I belong to Indian Statistical Institute. I try to pull the leg of my friends, statisticians. When you talk about probability, statistics is only an approximate science. It's not an exact science. Of course, they answered me back saying it's a science of approximations. Okay, so anyhow, others may deal with other facets of the data. For example, if you have census data, probably you are looking at the household income or something like that. Somebody may be looking at the education progress, or somebody may be looking in education whether there is any gender bias. Like that, the same data, that's why we say the different facets of the data. We know that even everything has different facets, okay? If I am there, I have different facets. Probably I have one face in my family, in my profession another face, in my office another face. So different facets of the data also may be there. Data transparency supplements the objectivity and self-correctiveness of this science. In fact, if case histories of the hospitals are made open, it would be much more beneficial to the mankind. Unfortunately, medical profession has become completely a kind of a corporate kind. If they succeed, usually case history means that somebody has a disease and they gave him a course of medicines. If he is not responding, again they change the course. If he is responding, it is successful. Or probably some fatality will can also happen. So if they succeed, they keep it as their trade secret. If they fail, they won't even talk about it. Okay, but again, if that is given, I think probably mankind would have benefited much more if it is made open data. Now, social sciences do not require laboratory infrastructure. That's why when open access movement itself was a big opening for the humanities and social sciences. After all, humanities people still can talk about Aristotle. Like morning, Professor Saju was talking about St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, we can still debate about St. Thomas Aquinas or something like that. Whereas in computer sciences, probably 10 years back concept, nobody would be discussing about that anymore. Okay? Now, however, physical and natural sciences do require expensive infrastructure because laboratory infrastructure is very, very costly. Okay? If experimental data is available to scientists, those who do not have infrastructure also can significantly contribute to the knowledge. For example, human genome data, you see that we don't have enough the computing capability and other things or even laboratory infrastructure for genome sequences to be. But now genome data sequences are published in open access. So even if you are in Timbuktu, you can analyze the sequences and find out the patterns. Okay, that is the advantage. So definitely data repositories would help a long way. Of course, somebody has to do some kind of laboratory experiments. It's not that we are going to do away with them. But still, there are many people who can interpret the data in a different way or contradictory or much better way than the person who conducted the experiment. So open data is a step towards transparency and quality in science. It is not that science is always right, okay? You know that in the early days of science, people wrote many things, science is going to create Frankensteins, or science is going to play the role of God and all that. I mean, a lot of debates were there. So I also believe that there is nothing so sacred about science, okay, sacrosanct about science. Science also, in fact, I always feel, I don't like the word science, in fact. Okay. Okay. I have very, very stronger views. Unfortunately, in 20th century, science got a lot of, I think, glamour and fad around it. So everybody was enthusiastic to call their subject as science. So I think that bug hit even Professor Ranganathan. So librarianship, he tried to prove that this is a library science, okay. And probably, not that I am wrong in my, right in my opinions, I have a feeling, no, you know, just morning I was discussing, in the 20th century, much of the physicists were highlighted in the society. They were given the most glamorous position in the society for the simple reason they are directly related to bombs, okay. That is the reason whether Einstein, of course Einstein is a genius, I do accept that, okay, or Abdul Kalam in India were praised because they are directly related to mass killing machines, which the governments are interested. Okay, what happens, the governments and society lay emphasis on some subjects, like in present day India, I think, mostly engineering and medicine. As if philosophy, anthropology, sociology, in fact, one of the Andhra politicians went to the extent, all these useless subjects will be discontinued from the university. Okay. So the reason is, that's why slowly I became a little against the word science, management sciences, political science. That is even more, I don't know what to say, okay. Anyhow, so you have human genome data, and from CERN labs you have a lot of data about these nuclear things. Recent controversy that I have touched. Not surprisingly, astronomy is a different issue. In fact, once I was addressing the scientists of National Center for Radio Astrophysics, and I was, this was about almost 13 years back. I was trying to advocate open access to information. And evening, they have taken me to their GMRT, where radio telescopes are there, only to find out in astronomy groups, any scientist can go to any observatory or telescope and stay as long as he wishes. He can take as much data as possible. So that means the open access culture was there in astronomy much before the open access movement. Okay. Okay. Then I wondered why astronomy people are so generous, which is not the case with our physics or pharmacy and other things. Of course, both physics, pharmacy and all that are related to pharmacy, a lot of profit. Okay. You know, profit also twists the research. For example, there were many articles to prove that coconut oil is bad for health because it's a palm-based oil, whereas sunflower oil is good. I know many of my friends from Kerala, okay, they drink coconut oil, they sleep in that actually, okay. So much, part and parcel of their entire food, culture, everything. And two things I envy about my Kerala friends is, they look much younger than what they are, okay. And another is, their longevity is much better than many states in India, okay. So that means there is something wrong with the research results showing that coconut oil is bad for health. Anyhow, how honest is science is a big question, okay. Now, the question is now, anything, of course, nutrition and all these are industry-driven research. Pharmacy research, pharmaceutical industry, everything is, which is highly suspicious sometimes. Even computer science articles. Is Unix dead? Windows Vista is coming. Vista was the worst failure in the market. Okay. Now, I thought why astronomy was open. Later I think until the mankind expands its territory to universe, we are open with that data. Once we have territorial claims, I think the astronomical data would be again closed. Okay, it won't be that open as it was thought. Anyhow, features of open data repositories, you require metadata because metadata is the most powerful discovery tool. Okay, and you know that Google and other search engines, mostly they index the entire text, HTML text, or nowadays, of course, other content management systems like Drupal or Joomla or something like that. But anyhow, the indexing is done on full text. Full text indexing, though even librarians have a lot of fancy about it, it has its drawbacks. For example, on a concise research article, full text indexing may be okay, but on a larger text, no. Like the textbook, if you do full text indexing, the chances of the book having many words not directly related to the content of the book will appear in the book. Jocularly, I say, for example, there is a biography of a politician. In somewhere it is in the mentioned he lost the 1991 elections, he had dog days. Okay, so tomorrow you search for a dog, the politician will be retrieved. Okay, no, this is, I am trying to make fun of them. Okay, so what I say is there are pitfalls in the so-called full text indexing. That's why metadata, which is created by the librarians, that's why where I feel proud of my community. That is cataloging we have been doing from the ages. Okay, we went a little overboard in Mark 21, but Dublin Core is fine. Okay, I mean, after all, it is meant for self-archiving. And so metadata is essential. Then you require vocabulary control. Natural language processing always says the problem with natural language is it is full of ambiguity. You have to resolve ambiguities. For that also, I think we have Thesauri and other techniques which are now being adopted in building ontologies. Of course, ontologies and metadata are a little more than catalog records or classification. For example, librarians were insisting metadata only about bibliographic documents, but we may require metadata of people, organizations, which we have in authority files, of course, but events. For example, this particular international conference has metadata. What is the title, who are the resource persons, who are the participants, who are the plenary, what are the plenary sessions. This is all metadata about this particular event. On events, processes, organizations, people, every entity we require metadata, okay, to make it discoverable. And tomorrow, probably we can apply even inference engines on that to extract answers from the data rather than throwing the web pages at the people. See, for example, the problem with the present day search engines is they throw web pages at you. And sometimes you find completely irrelevant. That is because of full text indexing problem. Okay, that's why jocularly I say, see, the problem is probably the search engines and even the librarians, we overemphasized recall, not precision. My feeling is when internet has so much information, plethora of information, we have to emphasize more on precision rather than recall. See, on an average in Google, you get some 200,000 hits, and no sane person will go more than 3 pages. That means 4th page onwards, as good as not recalled. Okay, they were collected, but you are not even looking at them. That's why I feel probably precision is more important. For precision, library science again had long back, even in 70s, we recognized indexing with Boolean operators alone has its drawbacks unless we develop context-sensitive indexing systems, which I call, I mean, that is the name I have given to Prezi and other things. So Prezi, we have preserved context indexing. That means I am preserving the context also in the index. Okay, so unless, of course, basically the idea is LUNS, and even Google tries to give some 2-3 lines to give the context. But context representation is a tricky issue, okay? That's where I think we applied Ranganathan's principles in our last project, because POPSI also is a context-sensitive indexing system, and where we apply not only ontologies and metadata. Then technology tools, of course, automatic data extraction, preferably, of course, if you are talking about big data, everybody nowadays cloud is only a platform. I don't give too much importance to cloud for the simple reason. For the end users, it is transparent. behind the scene, the computer science people have to worry more about cloud. So there are open data repository licenses are there. Of course, again, in these licenses also, you have general public license, BSD, CC, Creative Commons is the most popular. For data repositories, we use Creative Commons 0. That is the license. Of course, there are many licenses which I have mentioned. And some of the services, Amazon Web Service, where you can find a lot of demographic data, US Census, then summary of information of business and industry. A lot of data is available on Amazon. Astronomy has data. Biology also, influence of viruses and others in MySQL. We have chemistry data. Weather data, of course, the recent calamity in Visakhapatnam. And it could be mitigated because of the climate. Now we have better tools of weather forecasting, okay? Though, luckily, I don't know, man is unable to control the nature, but at least if he understands, he will run away from it when nature is angry with man. Economics data you have, then you require a kind of digital curation. How to host the data, okay? In fact, we studied now about half a dozen research students are working in the big data repositories and various related ideas, NoSQL, the schemaless SQL and all that. First, how to host the data on the web. I found when we studied various data govs, we found there is no uniformity and there is no standardization. So I believe standards are yet to be evolved in hosting big data. We know that in case of digital libraries, we have enough standards like OAI PMH is there, OAI OR is there, object reuse and exchange. For encoding, we have Unicode. For metadata, we have Dublin Core. Like that, there are many standards. In case of data also, I think we have yet to evolve because we are still at a toddler's stage. Collecting verifiable digital assets, so curation is required, and to tell what is, whether the data is produced in an accessible or processable format and other things. Certification and trustworthiness, these are very, very key issues because trustworthiness and certification, humans are involved, and by nature we are subjective, okay? Machines are not subjective, but unless they are programmed to be subjective, okay? Semantic and ontological continuity, okay? Use of open standards. So again here, when we talk about standards, you remember in my open mantra, we have even open standards, okay? Because if you want something future-proof, one of the biggest challenges in digital format is the long-term preservation. We know that long-term preservation is a very, very difficult. Nothing, again, it goes against the basic principle, nothing is permanent. So long-term preservation, trying to make it permanent is a slightly utopian concept, but trying to make it as long as possible. For that, usually, jocularly I say, when Ajanta caves were discovered, they were under the Nizam of Hyderabad. He hired the best of the Italian restorers of the paintings. Now only we realized after a few decades, the chemicals used by Italian restorers further damaged the painting. Okay, so it is difficult. That's why jocularly I say that in the world, only I know how to preserve data forever. Okay, but after 50 years, if you realize the method I suggested was a useless method, I won't be around to question. That is the advantage. So as long as I am around, alive, I can enjoy the status of giving the permanent solution for preservation. Okay, nothing is permanent. But again, daunting task. At least open standards to a large extent, as they allow conversion to other open standards, at least we may be able to preserve. But the big question comes, now world is producing data in petabytes. Probably in future it would be more than petabytes, so some yottabytes or something like that. But how long we can take up? Whether we will follow some criteria that this is to be preserved, this is not to be preserved. Actually, I know the bibliometricians, they calculate life of an article, half-life of an article and all that. Once I was reading, in UK, the archaeologists found the garbage area of a Roman settlement. And all the archaeologists pounced on that garbage area because it gives a lot of information about the way the Romans lived in the UK province. So even you cannot say even garbage is not useful. I mean, it has to be discarded. Who knows? For future, we cannot decide sitting at the present. Technology. Data repositories are much larger than OA repositories. Cloud computing is a good solution. Semantic web and linked data are much more important. Linking the data. Okay, how do you establish links? This is where ontologies and other things come into picture. Okay, my student is asking me to. Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, we have a few technologies like resource description framework and simple knowledge organization, web ontology language, then a query language like that. So with that, I think actually, we are building something with the University of Trento in Italy. We are building something called Entitypedia. That is, we take an entity and various facets of the entity, okay? So something like even chicken chow mein or something like that, okay? In a restaurant, it is different, and while making a recipe, it is different. Like that, various facets of every entity, which is a daunting task. Like probably like UDC fascicules, as and when we require, we build for that domain, okay? With that, I conclude, and I would love to answer any questions if you have.
Thanks to Professor Prasad. Any questions, interactions, comments, suggestions are welcome at this point. If you don't ask, I'll ask him to go on.
Okay.
Enhancing the usage of e-resources for research excellence, tips and techniques. Today morning I was thinking in what way I can try to relate, as my friend A.R.D. Prasad was mentioning big data, how to link with the space. I was also trying to link with my topic, library space designing in the digital era. We have to deal resources, we have to deal users, we have to deal with our staff, we have to deal the infrastructure and the reference area and so on and so forth. Now the question of coexistence of traditional and e-resources, this is the biggest challenge for us. Coexistence of traditional and ICT savvy users, that's another important issue. Now when we come to the infrastructure, that's where the present context is very important. Data center for housing the servers and switches is spelling mistake. User systems, staff systems, counter area. Now in that context, the question of usage of e-resources, managing the e-resources, etc. arises. Now, I will not go into the details of the definition of e-resources, etc. Straight away I get into the e-resources issues, which has links with the usage as well as the management of space, etc. E-resources are more complex to describe, fund, acquire, license, and support. The number of licensed resources acquired by libraries are growing geometrically. So is the case with open access resources with much more complexities. Open access resources are really complex to handle for the simple reason that major OA resources are smaller, originated by smaller publishers, maybe individual publishers, or maybe a society which is publishing a single journal. On the other hand, bigger publishers like Elsevier or Springer, etc., they have their own platforms. So managing the resources of smaller publishers is a bigger problem for us. There is no platform of their own, nor indexed by well-known indexing and abstracting. So that's another. But nowadays, that's not the case. There are n number of indexing and abstracting services which also index the smaller publishers' journals as well. There is need to make online services richer, easier to use, and safer for students, faculty, and the staff. The resource overlap, this is another serious problem. The same resources covered by different indexing and abstracting services and lot many other things. Low awareness about online resources. The challenge is too much information is a bigger challenge for us. Good IT infrastructure is a prerequisite, that is a bigger issue. I don't want to get into the details of infrastructure. Identity management is a very serious problem, especially e-resources management. Earlier, we used to hunt for the resource, hunt for the information, but nowadays plenty itself is a problem of us. It is in plenty, but to get the relevant items, as Prasad was mentioning, that is the most important problem of us. You can see this, this one, some slide which I have taken from some source. Plenty of information. That fellow is looking for something which he really needs, even though he is submerged in the information ocean. Probably, according to me and according to the statement given by DOAJ, now they are implementing a rigorous selection procedure for inclusion in DOAJ. The open access, well, it came as a big blessings for this scholarship. But at the same time, it has posed a number of problems. One of the problem was already discussed, plagiarism, etc. The other one is the predatory journal. Probably, when I saw the statistics of DOAJ for the last 3 years, that is 1 year back and 3 years, the number of open access journals from India was almost going with 30%. But it has come down now. Probably, the predatory journals grew up much more in India. This is what I feel. I don't want to give any comment about that, but the statistics says that. If I go to JGate Plus, one of the Indian origin aggregator, which covers about 40,000 journals, out of which more than 15,000 are open access journals, and from India 2,740 are the not necessarily open access journals, but online journals. PubMed Central covers about 3.2 million free full text articles, Archive 1 million, RePEc 1.5, Internet Archive, one of the best archive I have seen, but still a lot of improvements could be done. It's like a harvester. It covers the sources of American libraries, Canadian libraries, Gutenberg, so many other sources, which gives access to 430 billion web pages and 6.5 million texts. And HiWire free covers about 2.3 million free articles. Well, he's a little bit self-boasting here. One can see here, oh, sorry. You can see here, this the top one is the usage by University of Mysore. In 2009, we had somewhere around 46th rank in the country, and in 2013 we could climb up to 16th rank or so, which accounts to be about somewhere around 43.17% of usage by all the universities in Karnataka. That is the best way to predict, I don't say predict, to give the reasons. I will try to proceed further. There are 11 universities you can see here. If you take the national level, we come somewhere around, we get about fifth rank among the state universities. This is the same table, put it in a different way. What are the reasons for this high usage by a particular institute? What are the steps this university has taken up? Probably why I have put this slide is just to explain and substantiate the steps what we have taken. they are very useful for increasing usage of e-resources. These are the e-resources at Bangalore University Library. Like any other university, I will not get into that. A good library website is very important for increasing usage of e-resources. Library homepage as a part of the institutional or its own, doesn't matter. Links to the e-resources from the library homepage. Provide both alphabetical and subject-wise journal lists as well as the vendor-wise lists. Provide telephone numbers and the email addresses of library staff for any help. Provide subject guides to online resources. Provide facility to register online for training sessions, etc. Most important thing is probably, a number of institutions, unlike DVK College, they lack the infrastructure. The computing facility is a problem. The network facility is a problem. In the absence of that, or in combination with the infrastructure available in the campus, probably by providing remote access really matters a lot for the boosting of e-resources. This is what we have done at University of Mysore. The same thing I have replicated at Bangalore University as well. Probably that is one of the reasons our resource usage has gone up. But apart from that, a number of reasons are there: infrastructure, and who knows, the users themselves are elite. The research quality may be good, researchers' quality may be good, faculty quality may be good. That could be also one of the reasons. To enhance the usage of e-resources, naturally, one has to give a one single point access to most of the resources. That probably. See, suppose I want to search DOAJ, it doesn't mean that I should go through this portal. I can as well go to Google and put DOAJ and get into DOAJ and go on searching. That's there. But providing all the resources at one go in one place, it really matters a lot. Especially the usage of commercial publishers matters a lot. The University of Mysore e-resources portal has got all these things. It provides single point access to thousands of journals, e-books, etc. The number of hits you can see, it's a fantastic one. And access to thousands of e-theses and academic blogs world over, and access to IRs of Indian universities, etc. The issues concerned to e-resource usage broadly are the technology issues, costs, management, training, content, and the medium. The constraints are lack of funding. This is a serious matter, leading to deteriorating buildings and collections, decline in use, demoralized library staff, and the marginalization of the library. That's one of the reasons for going down. Lack of knowledge and the skills of library. This is a very, very serious matter, especially in the Indian context. I am not talking about some of the elite universities like IITs, etc., who are really good. Lack of understanding and the knowledge amongst the university staff about the information access and the delivery. The factors influencing and are facilitating the usage of e-resources. One is whether it is a commercial source or open access source, quality of e-resources, publishers of e-resources, and the name, discovery models available for users. That really matters. Discovery models they play a very important role. Features of publishers platform. Nowadays publishers also are trying to build up the platforms in a bigger way. They get the feedback, they arrange the road shows, they get the feedback from the users, and they try to improve upon their platforms as well. One-stop access to e-resources, say e-resources portal of UOM, cross-search and access for e-books of publishers. Here I would like to mention our own example. For example, at University of Mysore, we have access to e-books of Springer, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, C.R. Separates, etc., etc. If I go to Springer platform, I will search at the most the Springer e-books, and that too, Springer has got 170,000 books or so. I would have licensed only about 15,000 e-books. When I search the Springer platform, I will search the entire Springer e-books. Many times, even though they have given limiting facility to the full text access only, many times our users get with the problem 8 to 10 pages, all locked items, I don't get. That's where unless we train the users properly, and also it will mislead. On the other hand, if I go search through e-books through our own library OPAC, that is University of Mysore OPAC, there I can restrict the search to the e-books, which facilitates me to search the e-books across the publishers irrespective of whatever I have purchased. and thereby single search for multiple access, multiple resources. That's what, which gives links to the full text of the publishers as well. The orientation programs, what we conduct is very important. At what level? Many times we have a wonderful program like this, get it inaugurated, put the garland and everything. In the afternoon for the training program, there is nobody at all. Publishers will be there in the afternoon seeing only 5 to 10 people. But we use a different kind of technique. I never went for this sort of things. I simply went department to department, and every, probably each department I would have visited at least 3 times, wherein the faculty, the research scholars, one group, and again the students at a different level, another group. That way it would really help us. The link to both subscribed and OA resource through library website, trainers training program is very important. I need to train my own library staff too, because every time people may not come to me, they can go to any other staff as well. Lectures by scientists and the faculty members, we should encourage that as well. Infrastructure in the facility that I have already mentioned. Be in touch with users through email, notice boards, library website. This is one thing we have been doing wonderfully. What we do is, I have got group emails, department-wise emails, and entire university emails. And students level different emails, research scholars level different email group, and faculty level different email groups. So whatever I need to communicate, I communicate to the concerned groups. In that way, it really helps a lot. Exploit the popularity of social media. This is one thing which we did experiment, but not very, very big way. Probably there is a scope for us to use social media for popularizing the e-resources. Some tips, sources, services, and tools. Exploit OA search engines like Google Scholar. It doesn't matter whether somebody searches through Google Scholar, somebody searches through Base, somebody searches through Springer platform, or somebody searches through aggregator like JGet Plus or Web of Science. It doesn't matter. What you need to do is you need to give access to the full text or whatever they intend to do. That's what is required. Use cross-language search engines. Information gateways also try to encourage. See, so for example, multi-subject ones like Intuit or InfoMine, etc., or subject-specific like Sosic. Federated search engines also play a major role. And document-specific subject sources also we need to encourage, like NDLTD for thesis, and US Patent Office search engine for patents, etc. And academic and scientific search engines like Microsoft Academic Search, wonderful source for this. And aggregator services like JGet Plus or EBSCO, Host or Highwire, etc. IR repositories and Harvester like Oyster and Base. Digital libraries and archives like Internet Archive and UDL. One thing I would like to mention about Internet Archives is a wonderful source, which I told you, which gives access to billions of web pages. If you are looking for what you call all classic books on any field under the sun, you better go to Internet Archive, you will get. If you want to read Charles Darwin, Origin of Life, or if you want to read Newton's Principia, well, here is a source, wonderful source. Facilitate appropriate search tools. The last one is I have put question, ability to customize and personalize their list of resources, that is users. This is very, very important. Probably Prasad can throw some light on this. How do you enable the users to modify the library website to suit their requirement? I am not talking about some aggregator giving limit the search to your own journals. That's a different thing. Okay, there's something I read somewhere. I don't have much answer about. This is the screenshot of our University of Mysore OPAC, which gives access to e-resources in many ways. Let me skip. JGet Plus, well, though it's a commercial one, I really appreciate this particular product. It covers probably highest number of journals covered by any aggregator is this in the world, with more than 40,000, and you can restrict the search to Indian journals alone. You can restrict the search to peer-reviewed journals. You can restrict the search to your own library journals. You can restrict the search to my own consortia library, consortia journals, etc. Fine, that sort of thing. DOA, I already told you. I'll skip this. Base is one wonderful source I have come across. You can restrict the search to thesis. You can restrict the search to journals, etc. Fine. NDLTD for thesis. Of course, it is not a search engine by itself. It lists a number of search engines like VTLS or Base, etc. Intuit, a wonderful source for this thing. Although it is closed in July 11, the sources it has listed, they themselves will grow and naturally will get the resources or of resources whatever we want. This is the one I was telling you about, Internet Archive. Here the screenshot of American Library, not necessarily the Internet Archive. Directory of Open Access Books, Shodhaganga, Indian repository for thesis, and Internet Public Library. Well, this is one of the wonderful sources I have come across. I am very happy that I was also a part of the developmental team when this was started at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and wonderful source. If I am searching for a moon, how these people have put the information required by a kid as for the moon, information required for a teen for moon, information required for a serious researcher at the different level of handling the information. Well, open access journals, search engine, any subject you mentioned, it will list out the open access journals available in that subject. MIT course, open courseware, one of the best open courseware source I have come across. Patent. Now coming to again back to the topic, orientation programs, how it should be. Mainly for the freshers and the department wise. When you are talking about the freshers, it should, you can even call them to the library. But when you are going to the researchers and faculty, better you go to the department. An advanced training program for the faculty and the researchers and the PG level and above. Promotional methods, time-to-time announcement through website, brochures, posters, flyers, emails, competition, user meets, online tutorials, social media, blogs, etc. User education levels, again different levels. Information search tools. We should encourage our users to use all possible tools, search tools. See, it is none of my business to say that you come through this door, you come through this door. Why should I bother about it? As long as they get the information, fine. Let me introduce. Let them come through our OPAC, let them come through the aggregator platform, let them directly go to the publisher's platform. It doesn't matter for us. We need to encourage all sorts of search tools. Okay. This is the federated discovery service, how it works actually. The federated search engine is unlike the other one. It goes to a particular source, picks up the items, it goes to another source and picks up, if possible, it also does the deduping work. Now coming to the index aggregation model, that is latest one, 2 minutes just. Aggregation model, that is the index is aggregated at one level and one can, only the problem is it is dependent upon the service provider and the search engine link. ERMs functions in, they also influence the usage. Well, ERAMs, new trend is facilitate meta search, knowledge base, ERM and A to Z list, etc. 4 processes of central to which are central to ERMs are collect, correct, connect and control. Last slide. Librarian's dilemma. I have taken from some other source. Librarian says it is my library card. The kid says I have even a smaller wireless device that gives me access to thousands of books and movies. That is the stage we librarians are facing. We need to be prepared to face our kids and the students at this level.
Problem in the libraries. So space management is nowadays a major concerns of librarians. So the conference of space management, content management for network society is an important event of today's context. So space management library of this conference is very much useful to policymaker as well as the librarian to design or redesign their library for eco-friendly or user-friendly libraries for future users, so that user can avail the better facility, so that they can able to use the library resources more personalized and meaningful way of using the informations, using the modern redesigned libraries.